Today I'm going to talk about transition stats and more specifically transition stats in women's hockey. So just to give it a bit of information about my hockey background, back in 2019 I started working for the McGill Martlet's hockey team as a data analyst and scout. And approximately a year ago, I also started working with the Icelandic national hockey program as a hockey operations consultant. In both these positions, I help teams use data-driven decision-making to optimize various aspects of hockey operations, such as scouting, player development, as well as hockey tactics. And throughout both these experiences, I developed a habit of having to track games to actually get the information that we needed, get the data that we needed to analyze the game from a statistical and quantitative perspective. Unfortunately, this year, due to COVID, both our U Sports season and the division in which Iceland plays in the IHF got canceled. So that meant that I had a bit more free time to do some work in hockey analytics, whether it was in terms of data tracking or analytics research in the public sphere. So in terms of data tracking publicly, I focused this year more on transition stats and transition play. And specifically, I separated events that were with the puck from events away from the puck. In terms of events with the puck, I mostly focused my tracking efforts on zone exits. So basically, when you go from the D zone to the neutral zone, and on zone entries, so when you go from the neutral zone to the O zone. And in both these cases, the different events were categorized in three types. So controlled, dump, and failed, always putting an emphasis on puck possession when categorizing these different event types. For events without the puck, I focused my tracking efforts on two different events. So first, I focused on dump recoveries. So dump recoveries is basically following a dump in when you're trying to chase a puck. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then I also tracked entry denials, which is basically when you're trying to stop the opposing team from entering your D zone, and you do it successfully. Today, I'm going to be talking a bit more about transition stats in the PWHPA, and I tracked all the games that were played in the different showcases from 2021 between the Calgary, Minnesota, Montreal, New Hampshire, and Toronto teams. So why is transition play important? And more specifically, why is transition play important in women's hockey? Transition play is impacted by a variety of different factors, including tactics, individual player skill, zone starts, the score, the quality of competition, as well as puck luck that may or may not be on your side. And obviously, there are some of these factors that you can control, and some of these factors that are not really in your hands. They're out of your control. But where transition play becomes important in women's hockey is that women's hockey is a game that is based on speed and skill, even more so, I would say, than men's hockey, given the reduced physical aspect of the game. And therefore, the thing that helps teams move the puck from defense to offense becomes even more important in this case to help teams utilize the speed and skill to generate offense. So the overarching question that we'll be trying to answer today is the following. Can efficient transition play become a sustainable competitive advantage for a team in women's hockey? First, we'll look into if transition play is something that is sustainable, and then we'll analyze how it can become a competitive advantage from a tactical standpoint, looking at stats, but also looking at a few clips in the PWHPA games. So first, let's start out looking at the sustainability of transition play. Sustainability, or you can also call it repeatability if you want, of a skill, obviously in this case it's transition, is the ability of a player or a team to repeat the skill over and over again with the same level of efficiency throughout different games. So from one game to the next, or from one season to the next. Here we have a scatter plot showing the repeatability of transition play. And on the x-axis here, we have the transition efficiency of different teams in the PWHPA for different games. And on the y-axis, we have the transition efficiency of the same team, but one game after the initial game, which we'll call game N. So basically, the relationship between the transition efficiency of game N and game N+1 will help us answer the following question. Is transition efficiency repeatable from one game to the next? The short answer to that question is yes, because in this plot, we see a positive correlation between game N on the x-axis and game N+1 in terms of transition efficiency in the PWHPA. For the more stat-savvy people, the R-squared here is around 0.40. That's not perfect, but as we talked about a bit earlier, there are a variety of different factors that may impact the efficiency of transition play. And so 0.40 is a robust enough result for us to conclude that from a statistical standpoint, transition play is repeatable from one game to the next in women's hockey. So now that we've established that transition play is repeatable, let's take a look at how teams can use this to gain competitive advantage from a tactical standpoint. So first, let's talk about zone exits and offensive sequences. Back in 2020, Thibaut Châtel, who is an analyst based in Montreal, who works a lot with European hockey data, introduced in a paper that he wrote on hockey graphs the concept of the hockey decision tree. In his paper, he actually outlined a way of thinking about hockey plays and hockey sequences as chains of events that have different values in terms of statistical production and in terms of offense generation. And what was interesting here, and what is interesting in to apply to our data, is we can try to build decision trees to try to predict the event that is most likely going to occur after different types of zone exits that we have tracked. So starting with controlled exits, given that event N, so a given event is a controlled exit, the following event has a 43% probability of being a controlled entry, but also a 24% probability of being a failed entry. What's interesting in this particular case with controlled exits is that there is a 0% probability that the opposition will directly recover the puck in the D zone. And that's unsurprising, as you're obviously leaving the D zone with the puck and going into the neutral zone. So this means that you have a 100% probability of getting a chance to actually attack the neutral zone and try to get into the O zone following a controlled exit. When we look at dump exits, the trends are a little bit different, where we only have a 5% probability of having a controlled entry. But the biggest chunk of it goes to the opposition recovery, in this case happening in the neutral zone, with approximately 79% probability. Again, that's not really surprising, as when you dump the puck out from the D zone, usually the opposing Ds will recover the puck somewhere around here or here, depending on where you dump the puck out. But this means that only 21% of the time do you get a chance to directly recover the puck and attack the neutral zone to try to get into the O zone, whether it's with control of the puck or in 8% of the cases by dumping the puck in. In terms of failed exits, in this case, again, it's not really surprising to see that the biggest chunk of it goes to the opposition recovery. In this case, the opposition recovers the puck in the D zone, as failing to exit the zone will basically mean that you're still in your D zone and that the possession has changed. But the 3% remaining that leads to an entry attempt is mostly related to self exits from the opposition, where the defenseman, for example, recovers the puck at the point and makes a pass D to D, but fails to complete it. The puck gets out of the zone, and you get an opportunity to maybe try to enter the zone. The interesting thing here is that it is very unlikely that you will be able to control the puck in following a self-exit from the opposition, and most of it, or a very small fraction of it, even though it relates to approximately 3%, most of the cases of self-exits are followed by either dump entries or failed entries. What's, again, more interesting to look at in terms of failed exits is the downward spiral that can be created if you fail to exit the zone quickly. So following a failed exit, approximately 39% of the time, you're going to be able to control your way out of the D zone. But 34% of the time, you're going to have a second consecutive failed exit. Then if we look at 2 failed consecutive zone exits, in the third attempt, the probability of failing to exit the zone is going to grow by 2%, and it's going to be around 36%. And looking at 3 consecutive failed exit, the probability is going to grow again by 3%, which is going to mean that basically the more you fail to exit the zone, the higher are the chances that you're going to stay longer and longer in your D zone. And that also makes sense as your players are going to be more and more tired, and especially, for example, if you're in the second period with a long change, that can be very costly and could sometimes lead to either a goal against or a penalty. The other key takeaway from the zone exit part that we just talked about is that controlled exits are much more valuable than dump exits in terms of being able to generate offense and being able to transition from defense to offense. Because as we said, for controlled exits, you're going to be able to have 100% possession to attack the neutral zone and try to generate offense by entering the O zone, whereas the direct recovery rate on dump exits is around 21%, meaning that you only have 21% chance of actually getting a chance to enter the O zone or trying to enter the O zone with the puck. In terms of trying to gain tactical advantage here, one interesting thing that can be done with zone exits is trying to beat F1. And on controlled exits, that should be one of the main points to focus on. And even when you are within the failed exit downward spiral, you should try to focus on regrouping and trying to beat F1 on the forecheck to create a local advantage at some point, even if it's temporary, and exit the zone with full possession of the puck. So I'm going to show a couple of clips now that illustrate how you can either beat F1 by using your feet or in a structured D zone breakout. So I'll run the clip and then we can talk about it. So in this particular clip, after the dump entry from Montreal and the goalie puck touch, number 4 recovers the puck. And what she does well here is that she escapes the pressure of the forecheck that's going towards the right side of the zone by pivoting, and then beats the first forechecker by using her feet and by going around the net. Then what she does really well on this particular clip as well is that she uses a slip pass to actually also beat the second forechecker, allowing Toronto to leave the zone and get a chance to attack the neutral zone to try to enter the O zone. Now let's watch the second clip here, and then we can talk about it. Again, a pretty similar situation to the first clip where Montreal dumps the puck in. And number 3 is going to go to recover the puck for Toronto. Once she recovers the puck, once again, she decides to reverse the flow here, given that in this case, the forecheck was going to the left side. And as soon as she reverses the flow, number 24 is going to receive the puck and is going to make a smart play to the board side winger to beat F1 with a pass and allow Toronto to exit the zone, being able to attack the neutral zone to try to enter the O zone and generate something offensively. So moving on to zone entries and shot generation, and going back to Thibault's paper, one of the main conclusions that Thibault had in his paper was that he concluded that in men's hockey and in the league that he was looking at, I think it was the French and Swiss leagues that he was looking at, controlled entries are twice as valuable as dump entries in terms of offense generation. So is this also true in women's hockey? To answer that question, we built a statistical model to isolate the shot generation values of the different entry types. So unsurprisingly, we see that failed entries don't really add much offensive value in terms of shot generation. And that's not really surprising with a value that's very close to 0 and that's slightly negative. Then in terms of comparing controlled entries to dump entries, in women's hockey, we actually noticed based on the results of our model that controlled entries are more than twice as valuable as dump entries. The relationship between shot generation values of controlled and dump entries can also be proved or tested by looking at the dump recovery rate, which is approximately 35% based on the data that I tracked. So the conclusion here is that teams, when trying to generate offense, should try to prioritize controlled entries over the dump and chase to try to generate offense. As we just saw, controlled entries are much more valuable than dump entries, given that their shot generation value is about more than twice as much. And the dump recovery rate in women's hockey is about 35%, which means that the probability of recovering the puck on a dump entry is less than 50%. To compare this with men's hockey, it is the men's hockey recovery rate based on the data that I have tracked is around 40%. So to try to gain tactical advantage here in both controlled entries and the dump entries, teams could focus on trying to generate middle entries with the puck and leveraging a good attack position to try to generate as much offense as possible off the rush in the first few seconds following the entry. And in the cases where you are forced to dump in because, let's say, the neutral zone forecheck did a good job angling you as the puck carrier, having good support on the dump and chase is always great to be able to try to recover the puck, and also increases the probability of recovering the puck on a dump in. So let's now watch a couple of clips that illustrate these points. So in this particular clip, following the block shot, number 15 does a pretty good job at bringing the puck from the outside to the middle of the ice. What's also good in this particular clip is that number 6, who's usually a defenseman, has a good instinct to actually jump into the play and support the rush to be able to generate the middle entry. To be able to generate the middle entry. What happens following the middle entry is that number 6, the defenseman, leverages a good attack position with the puck on the side of the body to be able to make that pass to the winger that's helping her and that also joined the rush following the counterattack, which helps Team New Hampshire create a good chance off the rush. If we go back to the follow-up to the entry, we also notice that number 6 does a good job. The defenseman, number 6, does a good job driving the net for a potential rebound that may come from the initial shot. Then let's watch a clip about the dump and chase. So following the zone exit here, number 9 from Montreal dumps the puck in, and number 29 is going to basically angle the play for it to go to the right side of the defensive zone, if you're looking at it from a Montreal perspective. And number 5 here is as F2, she's going to jump into the play and create a 50-50 battle along the boards. What allows Montreal to actually recover the puck, which we talked about earlier in the key takeaways, is that number 29, who angled the play to this side of the D zone, is going to support the puck and be able to recover it, which allows Montreal to have full possession, recover the puck, and try to generate something offensively. So moving on to entry denials and counterattacks. Here are the 2 burning questions that we'll try to answer in this part. What are some of the pitfalls of counterattacks, and what are some of the key success factors of counterattacks? So going back to our decision trees, which we showed with zone exits a bit earlier, in this case, we can look at it from an entry denial perspective. So following an entry denial, 33% of the time, controlled entries will be what follows directly after entry denials, but 32% of the time, entry denials are followed by failed entries. If we actually compare that back to the controlled exit decision tree, we actually notice that the failed entry rate is much higher in the case of entry denials than for controlled exits. And the controlled entry rate for the entry denials is also much higher than the controlled entry rate for controlled exits. What's also interesting, and that's particular to entry denials, is that approximately 10% of the time, you're going to get the opportunity, or you're going to have to, I should say, to go back and regroup in the defensive zone to be able to then counterattack through the neutral zone. So the key takeaways for entry denials is that, as we just saw in the previous part, counterattack should be initiated with controlled entries to try to gain offensive advantage and try to generate as much offense as possible off the rush. And the other thing to keep in mind is that poor strategy in the neutral zone could lead to a back and forth of failed entries, given that the probability of having an entry denial followed by a failed entry is higher than for a controlled exit. So in order to gain tactical advantage here, counterattacks should be leveraging controlled entries by using lane changes to the neutral zone and using speed differentials to actually be able to generate offense off the rush. So now let's watch a couple of clips that illustrate these points. So this is a pretty short clip, but what happens here in the neutral zone following the first entry denial by the Calgary defenseman is that there's a sort of a jump ball situation that is created because of the lack of or the failed ability of the Calgary defenseman to quickly change lanes and bring the puck back to the middle. The structure in this case for Calgary wasn't perfect either, but the second clip will show how to better counterattack by using lane changes to the neutral zone. So in this particular clip, following the entry denial by number 23 for Montreal, as soon as she retrieves the puck back for the second time, she is going to make a pass that goes from the outside to the middle of the ice. So she has the puck on the outside, and she's going to make a pass to the inside, allowing number 39 for Montreal to generate a middle entry. And what's going to happen on the middle entry here is that she's going to leverage a good attack position with the puck on the side of her body to use the speed differential that number 7 is going to create to generate a great chance off the rush and a great save by the goalie to deny the goal. So what are the key takeaways from this presentation? First of all, a well-organized puck possession hockey game with controlled exits and controlled entries could allow teams to gain sustainable competitive advantage. And to try to gain tactical advantage, teams should ensure that little details in the game, whether it's from a structural or tactical standpoint, are done correctly so as to maximize and optimize the value that they can get from puck possession hockey.